Regular meeting of the Building Board of Appeals for the City of Ann Arbor, Tuesday, December 19th, 2017. Have roll call, please.
Ken Winters,
Here?
Paul Darling,
Here.
Robert Hart,
Here.
Gordon Berry,
He's here, he'll be right back.
David Arnsdorf,
Here.
Hugh Flack,
Here.
Glenn Dempsey,
Here.
Kathleen Summerskill, Mark Howell.
Here.
Roll call is complete. We do have a forum.
Thank you. First thing on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Anybody have any comments or questions on the agenda? If not, we can have a motion for approval.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second?
Second.
Motion and a support. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The agenda is approved. Next would be approval of minutes. The October 19th, 2017 Building Board of Appeals meeting, we will delay until the January meeting for review and approval of that, of those minutes. If we can have a motion to that effect.
I move we table approval of minutes of the October meeting until next month.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Motion and support. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. We will delay that until January meeting. First on the list of appeals, actions, and show cause hearing is BBA 17-009, a variance for 218 West Kingsley in Ann Arbor. Glenn, are you going to tell us about that?
Yes, I can tell you a little bit about it.
Please do. Thank you.
Giving just a little bit of background, of which can be elaborated on as we get into the hearing. The applicant, J. Bradley Moore, AIA, has stated that the future building at 218 West Kingsley should not be considered a high-rise under the 2012 Michigan Building Code. Mr. Moore indicates the 587 square feet area with an enclosed rooftop level space with bathrooms and kitchenette is small in area in comparison with the rest of the building and will only have an occupant load of 38. Other information presented by the applicant indicates the fire department vehicle access is less than 55 feet of the adjacent grade at the north and west sides of the building. The greatest portion of the building is below 50 feet when not using the rooftop floor as the height indicator for areas outside of the bathrooms and kitchenette rooftop amenity. And the average building height around the structure is 48.1 feet, and the height to the highest residential occupied floor is 47.75 feet. This is not using the roof floor height as the height of the building.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there someone here to speak on that?
Brad Moore, J. Bradley Moore and Associates Architects.
Are you signed in, please?
Can certainly do that.
Thank you.
I have some enlarged boards of the stuff that's in your packets. Just want to quickly run through a few things graphically. For those of you who might not be as familiar with the project as Glenn and I are. So this is the footprint of the Kingsley condominium building. It runs the entire length of the block. This is Kingsley Street over here, which turns into First, and then that is Felt Street over there. There is a county drain, Allen Creek, which runs through the east side of the site. That's accompanied by, on your graphic, a floodplain, which we can't encroach into. So the floodplain is hugging the east side of the building. On the rooftop level, there's an outdoor patio, place for people to sit and have a cigar, have a beer, get a suntan, enjoy the outdoors. That area is serviced by an elevator lobby, which also accesses an egress stair. There's a second stair towards the south, and there's an emergency egress pathway to that second stairway. So there's two ways off of the roof into protected stairwells. There's an area of about 587 square feet at the top of the stairwell and elevator lobby that encloses two bathrooms, one man and one women's bathroom, and a counter with a refrigerator and a sink, so the people who are upstairs using this space wouldn't have to go all the way back down to their own unit to use the bathroom or get a Coke or a beer out of the fridge. What we've done is we provided two landing zones, one on the west face of the building and one along the north face of the building. Our engineers come up with a geogrid that distributes the weights of the trucks and vehicles, but otherwise allows grass to grow through that geogrid. So that there are two places, one on the north, one on the west side, where the city's ladder truck could stage and access that rooftop level with less than 55 feet. So we believe we provided a location for the fire truck to access the rooftop level within the 55 feet. The balance of the building below has the primary occupancy of the building. It's the residential units where people will be occupying 24/7. We have access via Felt Street and a driveway that goes through the project, comes out onto Kingsley, giving the fire department access to that residential level from even a greater perimeter of the building. They can access it all the way across the east side from the north on Felch and also from the south from the driveway here. So the primary residential levels, all of which are below 55 feet, are easily accessible by the city's ladder truck. The fire marshal tells me the city's ladder truck can exceed the 55-foot limit, so that even if they were to park in other places, they could access that rooftop level. We believe that we provide something that meets the intent of the code, and that we have a 55-foot access for fire trucks to this limited 587 square foot area, and then the rest of the building, which is all below 50 feet, has plenty of access around three sides of the building, even though three sides is not required by code. So what we're asking is that the building not be considered a high-rise, since we're able to meet the requirements of the code in these locations, and since the average height of the building is well below the 55 feet. Happy to answer any questions.
What is the rooftop level at the plaza? Right, the tables and so forth. What is that level?
That's just an outdoor patio with rooftop decking.
How far below grade?
It's 55 feet if you access it, it's just under 55 feet if you access it from here. The question becomes is if you were to access it from over here, it's 57 feet?
58.
58 feet. So, but since there's nothing on this side of the building, that's what the interpretation of the code is kind of question here, you know, whether or not.
This is John Bogdasarian, one of the ownership
I'm
representatives.
signed in now.
I signed it in.
I'm sorry. So anyway, I think it depends on how you read the code as to whether or not you're, I guess, meeting it or exceeding it or whatever. We obviously feel we're more than exceeding it, but if you were to read the code as if you had to have access at 55 feet or below for the entire structure, technically here, we'd be 3 feet too high, but we don't have any rooftop space on this side of the building.
To me, that section shows a, what is it, 4-foot-high parapet at the perimeter that's higher than the rooftop.
That's only in the location of the rotunda, so it's not the case over here.
It's not the case
over there.
over there. Okay.
What's the sort of negative implications for being a high-rise, considered a high-rise building?
The biggest implication is The increase in the water service required to the building, it was very tricky to get fire access water to the building because we had to snake it underneath the Allen Creek drain. We were able to snake a 4-inch underneath that drain, but that would not be adequate to service the fire pumps that would be required for a high-rise building. We'd have to at least put in a 6-inch main, which we don't think we can snake under there successfully. It's a very tricky proposition just to get the 4-inch in the way the city engineering department wants to have it in. We'd also need fire command control centers. The elevators are treated differently, so they have to have an area of refuge at the top of each elevator, which would take out take out space from units, condominium units that have already been pre-sold. Other issues like pressurizing the stairwells, that kind of stuff.
I kind of still am concerned about somebody that's, say, in the table area. What do you call that area?
The patio?
Patio. Can they get to the roof where the ladder is?
Yeah, there's
Yes.
a railing here which has an emergency gate, so it's a gate that says emergency use only, which
Okay.
would allow you to get up there.
Is there any requirement for that parapet to be a certain height? Or you're saying there is almost no parapet there where there's access?
Yeah, the parapet down here is just 8 inches above the surface of the roof.
8 inches.
Yeah.
Is there anything there to keep people from falling over?
Well, the whole area up here is railed, so the only time anyone would ever be outside of that would be in the case of an emergency, where there would theoretically be fire trucks and ladders there.
Or if they want to get out onto the roof and look down?
Well, these are condominium owners, this is not a student rental. I mean, we're presuming a certain difference in demeanor.
We used to be students.
Be careful. Yeah. Yeah, that's not really the question at hand as to, I mean, the
Okay.
plans have already been approved through multiple stages. Site plan approval, planning commission, everything. We even have permits. We have a foundation in right now. We're in the middle of construction. We've sold 20 units, and we're talking about 3 feet possibly being a discrepancy. Whether or not that even has anything to do with the code, it depends on how you read it. It's pretty gray, but, you know, we went through a great deal of exercise here to address any and all concerns. If we're concerned about the fear of someone's safety in the building, I believe that's been addressed way better than code would ever intend it to be addressed. If we're scared about something else, a different fear or concern that we have, you know, I don't know what that would be, but I
Okay,
think-
it's just, in the presentation, it wasn't clear
yeah.
that there's a railing around there, that the parapet is only 8 inches high, where the ladder, the fire truck's ladder is gonna be.
Yeah, this is
Access.
essentially emergency gate access with a railed walkway here to a separate secondary stairwell. And then, you know, this is a railed patio amenity with the higher wall around it.
So is there access from the patio to the point where a ladder from the fire truck could get up next to the higher circular, semicircular parapet?
Yes.
Yeah, there'd be a
There's
gate,
access in there, okay,
there's a gate right between those two sheds.
okay. So they don't have to go out on the path to the
Correct.
other stair?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Does the fire department have a staff report, a recommendation as far as how they would fight a fire, or if they would rescue people from a roof with a ladder truck, or how they would approach that? Because it seemed like that would have influence on, you know, if it's, you know, you use a ladder truck to get up to the roof level or not. Is it to fight the fire, that's what they want the access for?
So mostly when they would set up something like a tower truck, which is our highest level of
Mhm.
reach, it provides a longest reach. You typically use it for things like rescue or just accessing some of the mechanicals or whatnot on the roof level. So we just need to be able to get firefighters up to the roof level, to the top of the roof level.
And if necessary, rescue people
Correct,
off of that too.
correct.
And you have a 70-foot truck, right? So the 55-foot, I know there was a limitation on some trucks. Some cities only has 55-foot trucks. Ann Arbor has 70-foot trucks, so the difference there of a parapet wouldn't make a substantial difference.
We could reach
Yeah.
the roof with the trucks that we have, at least the tower truck.
Why don't you go ahead?
What path would the fire truck travel to get to those two paths?
So there's a mountable curb.
That's Felt Street right there.
Yeah, this is Felt Street. So the curb cut which exists from the previous occupancy actually starts over here.
They're not going over grass or anything like that to get there?
Well, there's actually a geogrid which is.
But I mean, they're not traveling,
No, straight off the street.
they're
Yeah,
not
straight
going
off the-
alongside
yeah,
the
yeah,
building
it's just-
on the lawn to get to there. Okay,
Straight up from Felch.
that's my question, thank you.
And their ladders could reach, because of the tower truck, the fire marshal is indicating they park anywhere along the perimeter, they could reach that roof.
So the point at which you exceed the 55 feet in the code is just in that one right-hand turret area?
It varies depending upon where in the perimeter of the building you are, from a maximum of 3 feet to a minimum of just under 2 feet.
And that's calculated to the top of that little penthouse structure,
That's, yeah, the floor level of that penthouse structure.
the floor level of the penthouse structure?
Well, like this top of this roof, right? It's calculated to like get on here is 58 feet.
Actually, to get from there to here, because there's no deck level here, so it's a few inches shorter because there's no deck structure.
Oh,
In other words, the whole thing has a membrane roof.
Right.
And then on top of the membrane roof, we put down sleepers and decking, so there's about 5.5 inches of additional height. Here at the north end, it isn't at the south end, so. But the way you could interpret it is measuring from that point way down there to that point way up there.
Okay, so once again, the 58 feet is to the roof deck.
Yes.
Okay.
The roof deck and the
And
interior
the
space.
floor of that, okay. And I just, in
there's
case,
8-inch height in addition to the roof deck on he's talking about, he's asking, I think you're asking about the part that sticks up above the roof. What do they
Yeah.
call that?
Yeah, to the walking surface of that room and that deck is 58 feet from down there.
Right, and so this thing right here, whatever that is, that comes up higher than that?
Well, what I was explaining is that the roof deck down here is a little bit lower than this because this is built up.
I see.
So the maximum distance isn't measured from the roof to there, it's measured from the walking surface there to the.
I see. So it's lower over here than that. You're right. I guess.
But you have to measure to the floor a little bit.
okay. So, in case it wasn't made clear to everybody here, the building is sprinklered, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. And then, just out of curiosity, what is the footprint area of the entire building?
It's in the packet, I think it's
22.5?
pretty close to 22,000.
It's 22, I just brought
About
around
22,500 is the, yeah.
21,585.
21,000.
So, the other question I have is not so much code-related as opposed to historically sequence-related. So you guys had conversations with the city, with both the building department and the fire marshal as you were developing the plans for this?
The previous fire marshal and the previous building official.
Right, but, I mean, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you tell me, but was the assumption on your part that after those discussions, you were clear about how the building was going to be developed with them in terms of the relative heights and plans of things, and proceeded on that basis?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we had assurances
Crystal.
from them that the building would not be classified as a high-rise.
Okay. So with all due respect to the city, this is, and again, as an architect, this is one of the problems that we run into an awful lot, which is a project that takes a length of time to develop. You go in, you try to be proactive and go in and understand what the parameters are that you're dealing with and you're designing to. And it becomes inherently next to impossible if you get into a situation where, you know, a previous interpretation is one thing, and then as the plans get filed or get to a certain point of non-changeability, that you're, you know, you can't switch on, you can't turn the project on a dime just because there's a new interpretation in town. So I'm going to say that from my perspective, while I understand the technical part of the code suggests that this could be construed as a high-rise, I can't see it from the point of view of a tiny little 600 square foot piece and a surrounding deck elevating you to the next level of high-rise requirements. I just, it's because it's that close. And personally, I think that there are enough safeguards in place in terms of two means of egress, multiple accesses to the roof by the fire department, the fact that the fire department apparently has a rig that's tall enough to navigate any of the other conditions around the building. So, and the point being that to create, to characterize that as a high-rise, just because of that little penthouse piece or a couple of feet of difference in elevation is just a disproportionate burden on the building.
Good. Thanks, Bob. That's good. Anybody else have comments or questions?
What determines the size of the outside space you're having there? Is that determined by your preference? Is it some other limitation? I would think that, you know, where you're having it, it is, you know, if you have a partial occupied floor, if you determine this is the partial occupancy, where you're occupying, it complies with the height above grade requirements for the ladder access. If you decide you want to occupy at the far end, where it's 58 feet is the concern. So I would just want to have some permissions in place that you don't say, I'm going to make the deck bigger, I'm going to expand it so it's half the roof of the area. You know, what determines how big of a patio you're having? And
It's I mean, it's an amenity space, you know, there's defined in the condominium documents, you know, it's a common element, so I don't know that you'd ever be able to get that modified.
The condominium documents had to be approved by the city attorney, so any modifications or changes would have to be approved as well before they were recorded. That was the size that was determined by the marketing team as the appropriate size based on the occupancy.
okay, so if we granted a variance, we could say it was based on this size, it didn't exceed more than a certain percentage of the roof area, and it's all within the area we have 55 feet or less to grade. That would be,
And any approval would be based upon that size of enclosed building and the patio area. That could never be changed without coming back
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't be anyway,
Yeah.
like, just by definition, you're only approving this plan, so, and granting a variance to this plan. And I think any work done up there would have to go get a permit and come back and apply and revisit all these issues.
Yeah, we're not looking for an expansion. We're happy to get this.
Right.
We just don't want to change anything because we're a little far down the road for that.
Glenn, do you have any further clarification or any items that you want to bring in your interpretation of this as possibly being a high-rise?
So while I don't believe it's a gray interpretation because it does meet the definition. I will say that the international code had it at 75 feet. The state has amended it down to 55 feet. And they really don't address large buildings with small areas. So while it doesn't really represent the whole building, it doesn't give an out or an exception for the other parts of the building. So as that grade goes up as you climb, it gets better as you get to the area where the amenity is. So it's, it's a difficult situation because the constraints that will be required by this group, if it is considered a high-rise, is quite surmountable, and, there are some issues there. So I really would leave it up to you to determine what you'd like to do here, but I do see a hardship, and although at the same time, I know what the code says, so.
Okay. As a representative of the fire department, do you have any qualms about you and your men getting up there and doing the proper job that you're supposed to be doing?
I believe that our crews would be able to access the roof with the equipment that we have currently. So,
That's good, thank you. Anybody else have anything requesting clarifications?
I have a question for Glenn. When the state adopted the 55, amended the IBC to 55 and 70, from 75, did they make exceptions for local cities that had the equipment to allow them to be higher than that?
They give you one exception, but it's for an existing building, not for a new building.
Okay,
So they made the amendment, so all new buildings have to, would be considered a high-rise at the determination that it was 55 foot or greater from the lowest grade of the fire department vehicular access.
As a side note, when they begin discussions on adopting the 2018 Michigan Building Code, I'm going to suggest that exception also apply to new buildings.
The construction of this building, this will be a 20-year-old building by the time the 2018 code gets adopted in Michigan. Okay, if we have nothing else, you can have a motion. None of you want to attempt it?
So they're looking for a definition that this is not a high-rise, is what they're asking for, that this is not a high-rise, so that would trigger all the other provisions based on the plan submitted, I guess.
Right.
Is that section the high-rise section, or is that section the definition? Make sure we get that right. Section 403 of definition of high-rise. I move that the board granted a variance from BBA 17009 at 218 West Kingsley to make the interpretation that the plans that are submitted is not considered a high-rise under section 403 of the Michigan Building Code 2012. And we find this in the fact that it's the height to the occupied portion, the partially occupied portion of the roof is less than 55 feet. And that the footprint of the deck patio at that roof elevation will not be increased in the future. That that additional safeguards are in place, that the City of Ann Arbor has a 70-foot ladder truck, which is a benefit to reaching that 54-foot high occupied floor level. And we find that this meets the intent of the code.
All right, thank you. Any other clarifications, questions?
Just that this interpretation is not going to be construed as a precedent for future similar, potentially similar appeals.
Okay, you want that added?
Just fine,
Paul?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion, no other questions. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is passed. The variance and clarification is made.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is BBA 17-010, variance for 211 West Davis. Is there someone here to speak on that?
I'm Dan Williams, the builder. And Mark Bruder of Bruder Associates Architects.
Glenn, if you can tell us about this, please.
Yes. The applicant for the property at 211 West Davis is appealing to the Construction Board of Appeals that will allow the overhang projection, a fire separation requirement, to be less than 2 foot to the property line, which is not allowed per table 302.11 or 302.12 in the Michigan Residential Code 2015. The applicant has indicated that they would install a limited area sprinkler system for the garage and fire rate the soffit with blocking installed between the roof sheeting and the top plate. The history of this property shows a variance by zoning to get closer to the property line than typically allowed, which was not realized during the plan review process. The structure was built and the error was realized by a building inspector prior to a rough approval. The plans were also drawn by an architect and the house is being built by a builder. All parties should be aware of the fire-resistant requirements for structures. The architect has indicated that the wall was set back 2 feet with a 12-inch overhang and that this would be allowed as he believes I have interpreted the code incorrectly. He believes that the projection is allowed if the wall was 2 foot from the lot line and the E projection with the soffit being fire rated and blocking installed between the roof sheeting and the top plate. As additional information, the neighboring property has a required 15-foot conflicting land use buffer.
All right, thank you. You've already stated your names. Okay, you're signed in. Just let us know about the appeal, please.
I think that Glenn probably has stated everything probably pretty well. This existing building was on the site. We got the variance for 1'5" from the property line. We decided to set it back 2 feet. And with the assumption of our interpretation of the code, which we're not contesting now, that we feel that at the time that a projection was allowed up to the property line of an eave if it was fire rated. Partly, you'd have to assume that if you were to we could build a wall to within 1 foot of the property line. So the question would be, why can't we build an eave within 1 foot of the property line if it is rated similar to the wall? So that was our assumption that led to the placement of the house where it is. There is a provision in the when a property abuts a public way that you're allowed to project into that public way. And one way to look at this is the adjacent property has a dedicated 15-foot setback. And this was established by zoning, was known as a conflicting land use buffer. Dan developed this site adjacent to this, and we were the architects for that site. And going through the site plan process, we were required to maintain this 15-foot setback. And the city is very very restrictive in what we can put in that setback. That is, they won't allow terraces, patios. The only thing the city will allow in this setback is green. So it could meet the definition under public space, which would allow us to have essentially 15 feet plus our 2 feet, that is 7.5 feet to what would be a fire separation line. So we feel that, that the fire separation distance is adequate now, but in order to even increase the safety more, we would agree to treat the garage as a limited area sprinkler system and install heads off the domestic system so that we have a separate fire area for the garage. The garage is separated from the house with a 1-hour fire wall. And of course, the garage will be separated from the adjacent property with a 1-hour firewall, as will the eave will be fireproofed underneath, and the fascia also. So those are the steps that we are proposing to take right now.
Okay, thank you. Board have any questions for the appeal?
So the issue is not the wall, it's the projection,
The overhang.
the overhang.
The wall was already 1 hour rated? Just the
The
overhang?
wall
that
would be
wasn't?
1 hour rated,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
And the 15 feet, is that a permanent zoning restriction or no build zone?
The R4 zoning requires this 15-foot setback, even if the property were to to be redeveloped in the future, this could not be impinged upon.
Okay.
And it's also recorded in the condominium documents, too.
Just- So that's,
I'm trying to,
Put the two pieces-
that's
two things
the
together.
story in it. Where am I?
these are the townhouses, that's the garage,
Deserved it, yeah.
that's the 15.
Is the 15 feet on the adjacent property, is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
That's
and what can
this?
happen in that 15
This,
feet?
Nothing can happen in that 15 feet by zoning.
And these two structures appear to be built by the same people
If
at
you
the
put
same
these two
time?
together, that property
Yeah.
line is that property line, and so this open space is on the adjacent property. I mean, we have in the past granted variances for people building things in their backyard, or much like the air rights requirements. If it's an open space, you can't build in it, then if things do get built there, that you close up the opening or something else like that in the past, so. I mean, there is a kind of precedent that we've done that in the past, and knowing that that can't be built upon is similar to that, you know, there's nothing gonna get built there.
So this is, this,
Is the
Yeah,
property to
right.
the west
We're building
owned?
this.
Has that been sold to people? own
this
that?
is existing.
That's existing now, yeah, uh-huh.
Have they moved in? Is
To
it
the-
occupied?
To the west, all of them been sold and all of them, 3 of them have moved in.
So this section that you've got here, and you've got this circled, this is the overhang that's in question?
No, it might be cut off there or something.
Is it this side?
This is the garage there, oh,
Okay.
this is the one-story piece, so we're talking about
Okay.
over the end of that over there.
So it's off on the, it's over the garage, it's the garage piece?
Yeah.
Okay. Ah, okay.
And you mentioned the garage is sprinkled.
Are the neighbors aware of this? Have they raised any objections?
You're shaking your head.
I-
Are they
I
aware
haven't
of
really
it?
made them aware, to the west, I don't think has been an issue, been brought up.
So does the 1-hour firewall not go up to the end of the sheathing? How does the transition of that 1-hour wall to the roof happen?
The dense glass gold would go up to the top of the roof deck, and then the inside would be 5/8 Type X chipboard.
Okay.
And then additionally, the soffit would be rated with like dense glass gold 5/8.
So the new building,
That's in the garage there,
is a new garage built within 2 feet of the property line. And the closest building is 15 feet from that property line, closest existing building.
That's correct.
Okay.
And you said the wall is actually, the wall of the garage is 2 feet from the property line, so the overhang is 2 feet,
It's 1 foot.
1 foot. So basically, you said it was a 1'5" that you were supposed to maintain, did I hear that correctly?
1'5" was the zoning setback required, but we set it back at 2 feet.
Okay, so you're effectively intruding into that then 7 inches with the overhang? If you said 1'5", well, I guess 5 inches.
5 inches.
If you, so, there's actually only 5-inch intrusion into the space that you shouldn't be. Okay.
Are there any windows in the garage?
No windows.
No windows in that, I mean, my understanding, it sounds like it meets the intent of the code because there is open space there as far as fire not spreading from one building to the next.
Right.
So.
But he could, the existing could do something on that.
Well, you're saying
15
there's
feet.
that right-of-way concection, there's a, what do you call it?
That's a no-build.
That's a no-build
It's a
site.
no-build
This is
site.
a open
Here.
space requirement, yes.
Okay.
You put that on as whatever it's called, or setback or open space, so they couldn't put a deck there, they can't park there, it's pretty much dedicated to green space.
The planning department's been very, very protective over these conflicting land use buffers and won't let us do anything in them, except plant stuff in them.
Is that because the land use changed, because one's multifamily, one's single family, is that what's driving that?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
So I think you've taken steps, above and beyond by offering to sprinkler the garage and fire stop
Yeah.
the projection.
Is the garage gonna be heated? You gonna have a wet system in there, or is it gonna be a dry system?
We haven't, we should be able to do most of this with a sidewall sprinkler system. If we can't quite do that, we've in the past done a small heated chase to another sidewall head of a few feet, so that can be handled with just a heated chase, if we can't do it with sidewall.
Did you have anything further, Glenn, on this?
No, this is a difficult one because it was originated and approved, was not realized in the plan review process. Then the builder built it accordingly and it just doesn't fit into that box. So it doesn't meet the code. I will tell you, I have talked to the planner in regards to this, and this is a no-build buffer area. What may happen down the road, I can't tell you, but right now, it would not be able to be built in currently.
All right.
So in our past precedents, we've always said that, if something is built in the adjacent property, that the building be brought up to code. I don't know what that would be in this case, cut the overhang off. But, my likelihood is something gets built there.
Plenty of buildings are built with only a 12-inch
Yeah.
overhang.
Or no overhang, but it's,
Or
the water's
none.
right there.
Yes.
I mean, we could put that in the variance, it's just or they come back and get another variance, but the likelihood that something getting built there is pretty small as far as having that
Right.
needed space.
Well, the buildings are both brand new, so it's unlikely that any change is gonna happen within decades. So if they can't build there, it seems like it's gonna be a pretty much static situation.
Right.
the intrusion is small and the steps they're taking are more than sufficient, actually.
Okay, anybody else have anything to say on this, to say or ask? Okay, like to have a motion then, please?
Can we try this one, Bob, or? let me
Sure.
just- Okay.
I can mangle this as well.
The bar's high.
Yeah, well, compared to the last time I generated. In the matter of BBA 17-010 at 211 West Davis, Ann Arbor, I move to permit an exception to section R302.1, exterior walls of the residential building code, to permit a projection of 12 inches from the garage roof toward the property line, on the basis that the garage is going to be equipped with a limited sprinkler system, that the garage has a 1-hour rated wall, that the projection is fire rated and fire blocked, and that the entire assembly is facing a 15-foot no-build buffer area on the adjacent property. We find this to be equivalent performance criteria to the code, with a further stipulation that this specific condition shall be neither so general nor recurrent in nature as to make an amendment of the code with respect to the condition reasonably practical or desirable.
Okay, thank you.
Second?
Any other questions or comments on the motion? Got the motion and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is passed. Variance is granted.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is old business. Glenn, need to bring up anything?
I don't think so.
Fire department need to bring anything to our attention?
No, sir.
Anybody else have anything down there? All the way down the end?
Nope.
David?
Nothing.
Anybody have new business? I don't hear anything. Any reports or communications? We have time for public commentary. Is there someone here that wants to speak on?
The public is silent.
We do have a microphone for you. Okay, if we could, that about covers everything, so if we could have a motion for adjournment?
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Motion and second, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.